Good evening, and welcome to our first ever live virtual cooking class here at Torrance Memorial. I'm Danny Rodriguez, Director of Clinical Nutrition at Torrance Memorial, and I'm thrilled that you have joined us from your home kitchens to learn how to cook a tasty and healthy dish during our event tonight. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our instructors. I am here this evening with Torrance Memorial's Executive Chef, Sam Sellona. Chef Sam has a culinary arts degree from a prestigious Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, and has extensive experience in restaurant, hotel, and healthcare food service. Working as Torrance Memorial's executive chef since 2015, Chef Sam manages our patient room service and the food production in the Yang Cafe and Helena's Bistro. We are very excited to have Chef Sam here tonight to share his expertise. Joining Chef Sam is Kristen Hung. Kristen is a registered dietitian nutritionist at Torrance Memorial. She is a graduate of UC Berkeley and UCLA and completed her dietetic training at the VA Greater Los Angeles Healthcare System in West LA. Kristen works frequently with adult weight management and bariatrics and provides nutrition consultation for a variety of chronic diseases. We are delighted to have Kristen share her expertise with us this evening to highlight some nutritional aspects of our recipe. If you have a question, please enter it into the chat box. Following the cooking portion of our event, we will have a short time of questions and answers for Chef Sam and Kristen. I will help direct your questions to them at that time. Without further ado, let's get cooking.
Good evening, everyone. We are so excited that you're joining us here tonight. As some of you may know, every March we celebrate National Nutrition Month. We like to take this time every year to encourage our community to take small steps toward a healthier lifestyle. The theme for this year's National Nutrition Month is Celebrate a World of Flavors. And we are doing that by encouraging you to try cuisines from all different parts of the world and enjoy the wonderful and nutritious flavors they contain. Tonight, we'll be learning how to cook a cauliflower and chickpea masala. This is a fiber-rich dish that features plant-based protein and a wonderful variety of Indian spices. We'll give you a chance to gather the ingredients together as we talk through them tonight. For our fellow Torrance Memorial employees, we hope that you've had a chance to pick up a spice packet from one of our cafes. And for our community members in attendance, we hope that you've had a chance to pick up all the necessary ingredients at your local market. So as you get set up at home, we'll have Chef Sam talk us through what ingredients we'll need for tonight's recipe. For tonight's recipe, we have a spice mixture and a skillet portion that need to be prepared. Chef Sam, can you first tell us what spices are in the spice mixture?
Sure. So here we go. First, I have the main spice, which is a Garam Masala. I have a cumin, smoked paprika, turmeric, cayenne pepper, cracked black pepper.
Great. And what ingredients will we need for the skillet portion of the recipe?
Okay, we'll start off with our olive oil. We have garlic, ginger, yellow onions. We also have chickpeas, a tomato sauce, and cauliflower. And last, we have our yogurt and milk mixture.
Excellent. If everyone has their ingredients ready, we are ready to begin cooking. First, we will be preparing the masala spice mixture. Chef Sam, can you tell us how much of each spice we will need?
Sure, here we go. Let me roll up my sleeves and here we go. We'll start off with the spices. And our first spice that we're going to add to our bowl is our Garam Masala, which is 2 tablespoons. And we have our cumin, which is a half a teaspoon. We have our smoked paprika, which is 1.5 teaspoons. Get it there. And then we have our half a teaspoon of turmeric. Try to get all of it in there. And then we have our cayenne pepper, which is 1/4 of a teaspoon. And if you want more heat, you can add more cayenne pepper if you want. And then last, but here we go, cracked black pepper. This will be set aside for the next step.
Now, you are using ground spices, and many of us have this version at home as well for the sake of convenience. But we could also stock up on whole versions of these spices and grind them closer to use for maximum flavor and freshness. Chef, do you have experience using whole spices, and any tips if some of our home cooks were using whole spices?
Sure, I have some whole spices here for show and tell. I have which everybody's familiar with, which is a bay leaf. We have some fennel here. Can you guys see it here? Then we have some caraway. We have some mustard seeds, and then we have some celery seeds here as well. So these, at this point, you would saute it in the saute pan at a high temperature, creating it to smoke. That releases the aromatic oils and intensifying the flavors as well.
And then can we toast powdered spices?
That I don't recommend because it has more surface area. It tends to burn, and then you'll have a bitter product, and then you would have to discard it.
Got it. And do you know what the recommended shelf life is for spices, Chef Sam?
My experience at home, I like to purchase the smaller containers of spices, like the 2 ounce, maybe 3 ounce. Shelf life is about 3 to 4 weeks. The seeds, about a year. Anything more than that, you would have to discard because they lose their aromatic flavors.
Thank you. Next, it's time to prepare the aromatics. Aromatics are often used to add flavor and aroma to a dish. They help create layers of flavor in the food. Different cuisines use varied combinations of aromatics, but for this recipe, we have onion, garlic, and ginger. Let's start with the onions. Chef, I see you have several types of onions there in front of you. Can you tell us the difference between them and which one will you be using for our recipe tonight?
So tonight's recipe will be using the yellow onions because it's very high in sulfur and aromatic flavors. Just talking about it makes me want to cry. This is the onion that will make you tear up. Also, it will make you hungry when it's cooked or sauteing. It just releases so much flavor and aroma in the room. The next onion, typically used for sauces and toppings for tacos. This is a milder onion. And then we have our red onions, which is sweeter. You would typically find this in salads or maybe a cold sandwich. And then you have your shallots. They grow in clusters, and then these you'll have them in vinaigrettes or maybe a nice gourmet sauce.
Great. And can you demonstrate some cutting techniques for the onions for us and give us any tips for cutting the onions without crying?
Sure. The main thing about cutting onions, you want to stay upwind. So if you have an open window and the draft is going this way, you want to stay upwind from it. Also, a fan will help as well. It will blow the fumes away from your eyes, so it will prevent you from tearing up. So the first step I like to do is cut the onions right in half. This is a yellow onion. And then I like to lay it flat so it's nice and sturdy. And then the tip of your knife, you want to just cut it into a julienne shape. And you want to make sure you have a sharp knife. A sharp knife really helps prevent from slipping, and you'll get some nice cuts. So, and then you'll go the opposite way, and then you'll get some really nice minced onions. And this is what we're looking for in our dish. I'm going to set this aside, and then we can go to the next aromatic.
Great. Let's do the garlic now. How are you preparing the garlic for our recipe?
Sure. Normally, you would purchase our garlic just like this. It's in a husk. Some purchase it already peeled like this. So if you buy it like this, you just kind of tap it. That breaks the shell, the husk. You can toss this aside. And what I like to do is cut it sideways. And again, same procedure. You would do a julienne cut and then go the opposite way. And what I like to do is just go over it several times so you get a nice mince. And then just scraping down your knife. There you go. Mince, 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 mince. This is what we want. So we got our garlic here. And the next aromatic.
Well, now, if people do not have fresh garlic at home, can they use the pre-minced garlic or garlic powder instead?
Sure, if you choose to buy it already minced, you can buy it, but it sits in the oil and some kind of preservative. So if you choose to do that, that's fine, but I prefer fresh garlic. If you choose granulated garlic, it's concentrated, so you get more of our garlic flavor in your dish.
Great. Let's move to the ginger now. Do you have any tips for preparing ginger?
Sure, this is my favorite part because it smells so good. So I like to use the meaty part of the ginger, and you can see I already started, but I typically use a spoon, and I get my spoon over here. You can use a peeler if you choose, or you can use a knife, but a spoon is safer, and you just get a thin layer of the, you see how it works? It just scrapes right off. I'm going to flip it over. See how easy it comes off? And you get a nice clean ginger. And again with the same, I like because it's rolling, if you can see that. But what I like to do is just cut the side off so it's nice and firm. It doesn't roll around on you. And then very thin slices. Okay. And then I like to go the opposite direction and then creating really thin slices. See that? Beautiful thin slices. Then when you get your julienne, it's called a julienne cut. Then I would go the opposite direction and then start mincing. After it minced, I like to go over several times again just to make sure that it's nice and minced. Or what you can do too is you can buy a grater and you'll get the same effect. But I like this because it's really nice in the dish. So I'll set this aside. And here we go. And this is your prep.
Very nice technique. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we can prepare the cauliflower. Chef, can you tell us how to choose a good cauliflower and demonstrate some tips for cutting?
Sure. In your supermarket, you typically get it something like this. It's usually covered in plastic. But when you choose one, what you want to do is make sure that there's no blemishes on it. And to make sure that it's really fresh, you want to flip it over and then make sure the core, there's no dehydration. And then the leaves nice and firm, like you see here.
Excellent. And then can you show us how you would cut a cauliflower?
Sure. There's actually two techniques. I'll show you the first one. You will do is cut it right in half. And what it does is it exposes the core. I'll set this on the side. And then what you want to do is just run your knife and releasing the florets, just like that. And then you can just peel it right off. And this usually works, but I prefer the second method, which I'll show you in a little bit. So what you want to do is cut your florets into bite size. So I usually call it a spoon size. You want it to fit in the spoon. So I'll set this off to the side, and I'll show you the next step, or the next technique. For this, I'll use a smaller knife, which is, I have more control. And you'll start off on the bottom, and you would just cut the leaves off. And just work your way around and following the core. And it's really important that you have a sharp knife because if not, you'll slip and then cut your hand. So at this point, I got most of the leaves off. I'll go around one more time. Okay, you see here, you can start seeing the florets. So at this point, I would follow the core and go up and just cut around the core. And I'm sure if you guys can see it, and then everything just falls apart. Looks easy. Here you go. And then you would continue doing that, and then you will get to the florets, what you're looking for, and then cutting it into little florets.
That's a nice technique. Thank you, Chef.
You're welcome.
And can you explain to us what type of knives you're using for each of those techniques?
Sure. I have the typical chef knife. It's about 10 inches. This is mainly for chopping, dicing, slicing. And then you have a smaller knife where you have more control. This is about a 5-inch boning knife.
Great. Has everyone completed all your chopping at home? Well, now that we've done that preparation work, we're ready to move to the skillet. We'll be sauteing the aromatics first in a bit of olive oil. Can you share tips, Chef Sam, on preparing the pan for sauteing? how do we make sure our pans are hot? And would you recommend adding the oil while the pan heats up or after it's already hot?
My technique is I like to have the pan nice and hot. I already turned it on earlier. It's on a low heat. So at this point, I'll turn it up so that when I add the oil, it'll start to smoke. And that's what the point that I want to get to is when it starts to smoke, and that's when you want to add your aromatics.
Great. So the next step is to add the onions, garlic, and ginger to saute. And after that, we'll be adding the spice mixture and sauteing that for another minute.
Okay, so here we go. I have my pan nice and hot. I'm going to lower the heat just a little bit. So I'm adding my olive oil. And you're going to see a little smoke when I add to it. And that's what you want. You want your pan nice and hot and your oil nice and hot. I'm going to swirl it around a little bit. And you can start seeing the oil starting to sizzle. I'm going to turn the heat up. There we go. And it just takes a few seconds and it starts to smoke. And I'm not sure if the camera can catch it, but I can see a little smoke starting.
Now, if we didn't have olive oil, what type of oil would you recommend replacing with?
I like using canola as well. That's an oil that usually I can cook it at a higher temperature, sauteing. Olive oil has a lower burning point, so you have to really watch your oil when you're using olive oil. So just about ready. Okay, swirl it around. Just make sure it's. Just turn the heat up. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's nice and hot.
Got to get a good sizzle on the aromatics.
Yeah. And it's going to smell up the room. At this point, when you add the onions, everyone in the house is going to smell this. And they're going to start asking, when is dinner ready? So, all right, so here we go. It's starting to smoke. So I'm going to add my onions. You can hear it sizzle. I'm going to just give it a good stir so that it's spread out. I can start smelling the aromatics. It is so delicious. Wish you were here. So the next step, I'm going to let this cook a little bit, and I'm going to start adding my other aromatics, which is our garlic. And you don't want to add your garlic in the beginning because garlic has a lower burning point as well. So it will burn before the onions get translucent. So, okay. Okay, it's looking good. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to add my garlic. I'm going to stir it around. And you can see that the onions are starting to become translucent. That's what everything's cooking perfectly right now. And then last, our ginger. And this is what's going to turn everybody's head, the ginger getting in there. It just adds a nice aroma to the dish and flavor as well.
So, Chef, how do we tell when the aromatics are cooked through?
Sure. What I'm looking for is the onions to become more translucent. And then, as you can see, the onions are starting to caramelize. So we're just about there. I'm just going to give it a few more stirs. And then I can add my aromatic spices. I think it's ready. I'm just going to add my spices. This is what I made earlier. So that goes in there. And what we want to do is stir and spread out the spices.
You're definitely right about the aroma. It smells so good.
Oh yeah, this room is just filled with all the spices and the aromatics from the ginger and garlic and onions. It just smells so good in here. So that's what we're looking for.
Our next step was going to be to add the cauliflower florets and then continue to saute for about 5 minutes or until the cauliflower has softened and is completely coated in spices.
Sure.
Chef, what temperature setting should we be having at this
Okay,
point?
so now I have it at high. You can see the smoke coming out. So I want to lower the temperature so that we have a simmer rather than a toasting effect. So at this point, I lowered the heat to a medium, and I'm adding the cauliflower florets. And we want to stir until the florets are nice and coated with the spices. So it's going to be stirring and just make sure everything is nice and coated. And it may take a while to start to get coated. And it won't burn because our temperature is nice and medium. You can see that the cauliflower start to turn into like a yellow tinge or orange tinge.
And that's from the turmeric.
It's nice and coated now. And what I recommend, if you have a pan that has a lid, that would help as well with the cooking process. So I have a lid here. I'm going to set it on here and just let it cook at a medium temperature.
While that is cooking, I'm going to take this opportunity to highlight some of the nutritional benefits of these ingredients. Let's go ahead and start with the spices. There are several great spices in this recipe, including cumin, turmeric, and smoked paprika, which boast nutritional benefits, including antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, and aiding in digestion. One spice that I'd like to highlight from this spice mixture is Garam Masala. Garam Masala is a mixture of ground spices that is used extensively in Indian cuisine. The spices are usually toasted to release more flavor and aroma and then ground. Ingredients can differ according to region and chef, but it usually contains coriander, cumin, cardamom, cloves, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Since there isn't a standard recipe for garam masala, the health benefits will vary according to the recipe, but may include helping with digestion, providing antioxidants, and fighting inflammation. Spices are a great way to flavor your food without excess salt, and you'll reap many nutritional benefits as well. The cauliflower is another star of this recipe. Cauliflower is immensely versatile, and it's popular for its low carb and low calorie properties, at only 25 calories and 5 grams of carbs per cup. But it's also packed with different plant compounds that have disease-fighting health benefits. It's rich in fiber, which we know helps with digestive health, but is also beneficial for protection against heart disease and diabetes. It's also a source of choline, which is a nutrient that plays a role in nervous system function and metabolism. 1 cup of cauliflower contains about 85% of the recommended daily amount of vitamin C, which is well known for its antioxidant and immune-boosting functions. And you'll also get about 15% of the recommended daily intake of vitamin K, which plays a role in bone metabolism, regulating blood calcium levels, and blood clotting. How are we doing with cauliflower, Chef Sam?
Oh, it looks delicious. The cauliflower is starting to cook, and it's nice and tender, looks like. And it just smells so wonderful in here.
Are you ready for the next step?
Yes, I am.
Great. The next step is going to be to add the drained chickpeas, tomato sauce, and 1/4 cup of water to the skillet. We'll be stirring to combine, and we'll let it simmer over medium-low heat, stirring occasionally for about 15 minutes. This will help mellow the acidity of the tomato sauce and allow the spices to blend. If you notice that the mixture becomes too dry as it simmers, you can add a couple more tablespoons of water. It's looking really good. How's everyone's looking at home? Well, Chef, at this stage, what temperature setting should we be having?
I still have it at simmer. I had to lower the temperature a little bit because the tomato sauce was just popping. So I don't want the tomato sauce to burn. So I'm constantly adjusting my temperature. That's part of cooking. You're always watching your temperature. So I haven't added the water yet. I'm going to add that right now. We're looking for about 3/4 of a cup of water. And you may have to add some more water as it cooks because here we go. Because of the garbanzo beans or chickpea, depending, it may absorb more liquid. And each batch is always different. I've made this recipe twice now, And I got two different textures that I was looking for. So you're constantly adjusting your cooking and your moisture. So this one looks a little bit dry, so I'm going to just add another dab of water. And then I just put the temperature up just a little bit too. And I'm going to just let it sit and simmer until the next step.
So what sauce consistency are we looking for here?
I'm looking for a creamy texture, and it looks like it's just about there. You can tell that the tomato sauce is starting to concentrate. It's starting to get thicker. And the cauliflower is coated with the tomato sauce and the spices. So everything's coming together.
Excellent. While that is simmering, let's go ahead and talk about a few more nutrition tips. One tip I wanted to mention here is that when you are using canned beans, a good idea is to look for the no salt added version. If you select the regular version, it can have nearly 400 milligrams of sodium per serving. That could equal almost 1,200 milligrams for the whole can. The no salt added will in contrast have about 50 milligrams of sodium per serving or 175 milligrams for a can. I also usually like to take the beans and rinse them off to remove any excess salt prior to using. The same goes for the tomato sauce. You can use a no salt added version to reduce the excess sodium that canned foods usually contain. 1 can of regular tomato sauce can have over 2,500 milligrams of sodium in it. That's more than is recommended for a full day's intake. Alternatively, a no salt added version will contain about 140 milligrams of sodium per can. You can always add a little bit of salt to taste in your recipes, but you can't remove the sodium that's added in canned goods, so it's always better to control the amount yourself. Let's also talk for a minute about chickpeas. Chickpeas are packed with fiber and protein, which not only promote feelings of fullness, but also make them a great plant-based alternative to meat. 1 cup provides about 12 grams of protein, which is approximately the same amount of protein you would get from about 2 eggs or 2 ounces of meat. Chickpeas are also a source of several minerals like magnesium and potassium, which support heart health. They contain saponins, which are plant compounds that may help prevent development of certain cancers. 1 cup provides approximately 15% of the daily value of iron and contains some vitamin C too, which helps with the iron absorption. They also provide about 10 grams of fiber per cup. They're very affordable and easy to add to stews, salads, and soups. A great food to incorporate if you don't already consume them regularly. Now, as we get ready for the final steps of this recipe, I just wanted to note that this recipe usually calls for heavy cream. Heavy cream is that fat-rich part of fresh milk, and it contains about 36 to 40% milk fat, which makes it one of the highest fat dairy products around. In today's recipe, we are replacing this with plain Greek yogurt and low-fat milk as a healthier alternative. The Greek yogurt will help perform the thickening function that heavy cream usually performs, but it's lower in saturated fat and higher in protein. We add the milk to thin it out a bit and achieve a texture similar to that of heavy cream. We'll be using an equal part of Greek yogurt and milk in place of the heavy cream. If you're following a vegan diet, you can substitute this with a mixture of soy milk and olive oil. Let's check on how things are coming along. The sauce should have simmered for about 15 minutes.
Approximately.
And now it's time for those final steps. So now we want to add the yogurt and milk and then taste it and add a little bit of salt as needed.
Okay, here we go. So I'm turning the heat off here. I'm just going to give it a stir to just to let it cool down just a tad. I don't want that simmering effect here. Okay, now it's nice and cool. There's no simmering. At this point, I'll add my yogurt and milk mixture. Just pour it in. Get the rest of it in there. Yep. And then we'll just give it a nice twirl. Oh boy, I'm getting hungry looking at this. This looks so delicious.
Just So Chef Sam, you turned off the heat at this point. Can you explain to us what the purpose of that was?
Well, the main purpose is that we don't want our milk to curdle, and you'll get a lumpy sauce. And you can see here it's nice and smooth, creamy. Smells delicious, and it's just nice texture. I can't wait to eat this.
Great. And how do you recommend serving this dish?
Okay, I have two presentations that I'm going to do right now. One is with a pita bread. Reach over. Gonna get a portion here. Doesn't that look delicious?
It looks amazing.
Yeah. This is about right portion. I'm going to give a little bit more. What I like to do is add a little bit of cilantro. And then I have some nice bread.
Beautiful.
This is one technique I like to do. And the other is serving it over brown rice. I have some long grain brown rice here that I cooked earlier. I just like to plop it right in the middle. It's a little bit more than 4 ounces, but you know. There you go. We'll just scoot everything over. And I like it overlapping and onto the plate. So on the rice and some on the plate. There we go. Is everybody getting hungry at home?
I sure am.
Yeah. There you go. I'm going to scoot this over. And again, I like to do a little cilantro. And this is my presentation.
Beautiful, Chef Sam. Thank you so much for showing us how to cook this recipe tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Chef Sam, that looks delicious and it smells amazing. I can't stress enough, everyone, how amazing it is. At this time, we will be transitioning to the question and answer portion of our event. If you have a question for Chef Sam or Kristen that you have not already submitted, please type it into the chat box at this time. The first question is for Kristen. Is this recipe as posted vegan?
So this recipe is not vegan because it does use a small amount of milk and also yogurt. But if you were following a vegan diet, you can just replace that with a little bit of soy milk and olive oil, and then it would be a vegan recipe.
Perfect. This next question is for Chef Sam. Chef Sam, instead of using rice, can we have a salad instead as the base?
Yes. I typically, myself, I like to eat this type of dishes with a mixed green, just a light vinaigrette, or maybe even lemon, freshly squeezed lemon.
Wonderful.
And that would just top it off perfectly.
Someone also wants to know if we can use a different type of onion, for example, like a sweet onion.
Yes. The yellow onion, because it's so high in sulfur, it does overwhelm the senses. So a white onion, I have some here. I'm going to reach down, sorry. This is a milder onion, so this will be the next step that I'll go for if you're looking for something that's not so oniony.
And I have one more question for you, Chef Sam. What is the difference between chickpea versus garbanzo bean?
Nothing. They're both the same thing.
Okay.
Chickpea and garbanzo bean are the same product.
Good to know. Good to know. What if someone wants to use dry chickpea instead of canned?
Well, that's the same as soaking pinto bean or black bean. You want to soak it overnight in the refrigerator. And soaking it overnight will soften the shell. And then during the cooking process the next day, it just cooks much faster.
Great. This next question is for Kristen. Kristen, what if I want more protein in the meal? What can I add?
So if you're looking for additional protein, this dish has about 9 grams of protein per serving, which is about a little bit over a cup. But if you're looking for a little bit more than that, and you're not following a vegetarian or a vegan diet, you can add a meat-based protein like chicken or beef, and that would still pair really nicely with the flavors of this dish.
Wonderful. There was also a question about whether there was a concern for any individuals having this recipe. Is there a concern for those, for example, who are on blood thinners or who are on blood pressure medications?
Well, I would say if you are using like the full salted version of some of the canned goods, then definitely that would be a concern if you are on some blood pressure medications or if you have a high blood pressure. So I would definitely recommend using the no salt added versions for that.
And I have another question for you. Are chickpeas a good replacement for meat?
Yes, so chickpeas are a great plant-based source of protein. Now, one thing to consider though is that they are considered what we call an incomplete protein, which means they don't contain all of the essential amino acids. So if you are using it as your main protein, you might want to pair it with something like a grain. That's what we call complementary proteins that provide together all of the essential amino acids that you would need.
Wonderful. Chef Sam, there is a question about what is garam masala?
Garam masala, depending on the region, tonight in our garam masala has cinnamon, mace, cardamom, and cumin, and that's our mixture for tonight. But every region has their own version of the garam masala.
Thank you, Chef Sam. We also wanted to know, can this dish be made ahead of time?
Yes, I like to cook ahead because I'm a dad, so I do a lot of cooking ahead. This can be just follow the recipe like we did tonight. And then you want to chill it, bring it down to 40 degrees within 6 hours. And the next day, you can pop it in the microwave if you choose, or you can just put it back on a skillet to reheat. Just make sure you bring it the temperature back to 165.
Wonderful. Someone was wondering if we could use curry powder instead of the garam masala.
Just about the same. The complexity of the curry is not as complex as the garam masala. But although curry has over 32 spices and seeds in the curry mixture, but garam masala has a nice sweet flavor to it. So you get a nice flavor if you're looking for that flavor.
Thank you, Chef Sam. And then someone was wondering, since we're using so little olive oil and it has such a low smoke point, what can we do to deal with that? With it,
just controlling your temperature. You want to keep your eye on the oil, especially if you're using olive oil. I had the temperature at high, but once it started to smoke, that's when I added my aromatics, and it cooled the pan down, and I got a nice saute on the aromatics.
Wonderful. And Kristen, this question is for you. We were wondering, for diabetics, is there too much carbohydrate in this recipe?
That's a great question. So this is a fairly high carbohydrate dish because of the chickpeas. So for a serving, it has about 30 grams of carbohydrate per serving. Now, for most people with diabetes, that is an acceptable amount for a meal, though that will vary individual to individual. But keep in mind that this is a very, very high fiber dish. So the carbohydrates that you get from this dish will not be absorbed the same as if you were to get 30 grams of carbohydrates from a piece of cake or a pastry. Now, it is served usually with either a naan bread or with rice. And so if you are following a carbohydrate controlled diet, you may not be able to do it with one of those on the side, but maybe on top of a mixed green or a salad might be a nice option for you.
Wonderful. And Chef Sam, this question is for you. What about avocado oil? Would that be a good option to try?
Personally, I've never worked with avocado oil, but I hear that it does enhance the flavor, adds a nice smoothness to the spices if you do use that oil. But yes, you could use avocado oil. I think it would be beneficial health-wise and add nice complexity to the dish.
Definitely. It definitely has a nice flavor to it. And this question can either be for Kristen or Chef Sam. What was the portion of Greek yogurt to milk? Does anybody know?
I did a 50-50. Recipe called for one third of a cup, and I broke it down to a 50-50.
Perfect. Okay, well, I think those are all the questions that we have for tonight. That's all the time. Thank you to Chef Sam and Kristen Hung tonight for sharing their expertise with us. To everyone who joined us, thank you for your time and attention. For our fellow employees participating with our World of Flavor Passport, your code word for attendance tonight is chickpea. Again, the code word is chickpea. We hope you enjoyed cooking with us and that you learned something new today. Enjoy your masala tonight. And from all of us at Torrance Memorial, stay healthy and eat well. Good night, everyone.